Hello, Kim Knight here, aka the Kiwi Health Detective. And today I want to talk about a topic that is very dear to my heart. It's been a big lesson for me and a very, very important lesson for a lot of people. And I wrote about it in the book, The Inspiration Bible, which was a compilation of inspirational stories created by publisher Emily Gower. So if you're interested in that book and reading more, then go look at my website. So, my question to you is, are you a martyr or are you a master? And a few years ago, I was at a talk by one of my spiritual teachers, Paramahansa Prajnanananda, and that's a long word to say. I remember Paramahansa Prajnananda saying one day that as he was going through customs and having to write his name, even he had to check how many N's there were in his name. Anyway, I digress. So, we were at a talk, and he began his talk and he said, your goal in life is to become your own master. And when he said those words, they just sort of like hit me like a brick. And I was like, oh my God, yes, I am not the master of my life. And yes, it seems that that is one of the major lessons that I'm here to learn. And this topic is so critical to understand if you either are looking to be happier or healthier in your life. Because what I have found with every single client that I've worked with, whether they've got unhappiness issues or health issues, is that at the bottom of it lies some form of disempowerment. In other words, at some point in our life, we have felt disempowered. And out of that disempowerment, we've created limiting beliefs and limiting inauthentic behaviors, which lead us down the wrong track and lead us to unhappiness and illness. So this topic is a very, very critical topic to understand. So let's look at the sides of the scale here. And the way I like to look at it is that on one side of the scale, we can be what we might call a victim. And a lot of people don't like that word, but you know what? It's so empowering to own it. And this is what this is all about. It's about moving from disempowerment, where we've become disempowered and then unconsciously perpetuated that disempowerment, and moving to empowerment. And so if we have victim over here, we're going to have self-mastery over here. And I believe that we're here as human beings to move along this scale. And certainly that's been my lesson, and as I said, for the many, many people that I've worked with, it's the same thing over and over again, just turning up in different guises. And as they say, you can't change what you don't acknowledge. And so the first thing that we can do is, if there's a slight chance that we might have some victim consciousness inside of us, it's actually to own it and acknowledge it, and that will already start the change. So it's not about going into guilt or shame or I'm bad or I'm not good enough, which of course is actually what's often going to happen, because if we're down here in victim, then those are the sort of thoughts that we're going to be perpetuating. So it's very important though to acknowledge what is without judgment, which goes for everything in life in general. So here we are down here, and really if we're down here, we're operating from our false self. We're not operating from our true self. We're operating from a self that was created a long time ago, and it became our identity. So we could say it's a false identity that we are perpetuating without even realizing it. And one of the things we do in embraining, for example, is that we identify these false identities and then we replace them with a new identity. We need to create new core identities. And over here we will have our true self. So our job is to move from victim, disempowerment, false self, false identity, to self-mastery, self-empowerment, and our true self. And interestingly enough, over here in this disempowerment section, and is martyrdom, which often shows up as martyrdom, is that we can have what we might call overt and covert martyrdom. And the overt martyrs are more easy to notice because they're being overt about their martyrdom. They'll be, woe is me, my life is full of problems, poor me, and they'll be talking about it, and it will be quite obvious. But the harder one to spot, which is what I used to do, is the covert martyr, where everything is internalized and we're going around making ourselves a martyr, but we've got maybe a smile on our face, or maybe what we might call a mask. And we don't know we're being a martyr, and other people don't either, and often other people can think we're quite strong, but inside we're really not strong at all, and we're feeling actually quite weak. And what is going to happen is that we're going to have different behaviors according to whether we're sitting over here or over here. So if we're sitting over here in victim, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be blaming the world and ourselves for our problems. So there will always be an external reason for why something isn't working. So, and we tend to, in our phraseology, we'll be saying things like, so-and-so made me feel upset, rather than owning it and taking responsibility, which is over here in self-mastery, taking responsibility and looking internally for the solutions and saying, I felt upset when so-and-so said something. So it's really easy to spot where are we on this scale by watching our language. Our language gives a lot away, a lot. Even how we describe our symptoms will tell us what is actually going on underneath the symptoms at a metaphysical level. So what will happen is we will be blaming, and we will just blame everything for outside of us for what is not going right in our life. But you see, the problem with that is that if we look outside and blame, then we're actually giving our power away to do anything about it. And all the power is within. It is all within. We all have the power inside of us to change our circumstances, even if we don't believe that initially, and even if we don't know how to. But the truth is we do. And that is what we're here to learn. We're here to learn, if we're here, how to move over to here. And the first step is to recognize and acknowledge the truth of what is. So I remember one very turning point time for me in this journey from victim to self-mastery. And I'm somewhere along here. I'm not over here anymore. I'm not yet over here completely self-mastered. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm not quite sure. But when I was more over here, when I was sick, I'd been off work for several years, unable to work, and I was on a benefit. And I had some, I don't know how it happened, but I was able to go overseas for a period of time. And if you do that, then you have to you have to re-register for the benefit. If you've been out of the country, I think it was like more than a month, you have to re-register. And I did not like being on the benefit. But the trouble was, you see, there was still a lot of me that was in victim consciousness and not believing that I had the ability to look after myself. And obviously I had symptoms, but that was all tied up with being in this state of consciousness. But I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy going into the office. I didn't enjoy being what felt like interrogated, over how I was living my life and feeling beholden to these people. Even though obviously I was very grateful for the money, it didn't feel good. And when I went into the office, I used to look around and look at the people and think, yeah, they're sort of like in victim too. I'm in victim and they're in victim and we're all in victim and we're all sort of, just staying in victim. Anyway, I came back from overseas and I still, from the doctor's medical standpoint, I could go back onto a benefit. I still wasn't well. And at that point, I had started to work part-time, but it was only part-time. And so, there wasn't a huge amount of money coming in. But I had to make a choice, and I was out walking one day, and I remember very clearly walking back down the driveway thinking, how will I feel if I go back and register, on the benefit? How will that make me feel inside? And I could feel myself sort of shriveling inside, and it just felt like a really sort of depressing, downward, not good feeling. And then I thought to myself, how will I feel if I don't go back on the benefit? How will that feel inside? And even though it felt scary, it felt so much better. It just felt like I was pulling myself up. I could stand up straighter. I wasn't beholden to somebody else interrogating me all the time. I felt like I was literally, it would be like I was standing in my power. And so I made a decision, even though it was pretty scary at the time, because I really didn't know how I was going to support myself financially. I knew that I had to make that commitment to commit to the change. And I've definitely found that once we commit to something, and often the commitment comes first before anything else changes, but once we commit to something, then the universe supports us, especially if it's for our highest good. And so I made a decision that day, that moment, okay, I'm not going to sign back on the benefit. And I felt so good inside, even though it was really, really scary. So that is an example of, these choices that we need to make along the way if we want to move from victim to self-mastery. And it wasn't an easy ride, because I still had a lot of the patterning inside me, the thought patterning that keeps us in victim consciousness. And so I had to really, really work hard to change those thoughts, to change those beliefs, to change my constant, continuous thought patterns. And apparently we have something like 60, 70,000 thoughts a day in our head. And the question is, are they serving you or not? Are they leading you towards the life you want, or are they keeping you stuck in the life that you don't want? And so I had to do a lot of work and a lot of perseverance, and go through a lot of fear to keep moving along this line here. But with perseverance, we can make it. And it is so much better to be living over here than over here. And so I see that the work I do now, even though people come to me and they may be unhappy or unhealthy, really what we're dealing with is this. For a lot of people at some level, and it will vary for each person, and that will be the direct result of whatever has happened to us in our life. How much have you been disempowered in your early life, or how much did you feel disempowered in your early life? How much were you not able to, or did you not feel able to be your authentic self? How much were you not able to communicate how you honestly felt, and to say, to communicate your feelings and be your true self, your authentic self? Because when we stop being our true self and our authentic self, then we become a victim, and we become what we call our false self. So I hope this has been interesting and useful. It's very, very important information for everybody that I work with anyway, and certainly for myself. So I look forward to speaking again in another video.